Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Andrew and Steemit CEO, Ned Scott.
Hello, can you hear me in the back row? Can I get a thumbs up? Cool. I'm Andrew McMillen. I'm a journalist from Australia, and I'm here to speak with Ned Scott, CEO of Steemit Incorporated. To begin, Ned, I wanted to ask if you could take us back a few years. You were sitting, I believe, at the dining room table with your father, and you read an article on Yahoo Finance that mentioned Bitcoin, and you're interested in this topic, and you turned to him and you asked him what he thought of it. And what did your father say?
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was the very first moment I had discovered Bitcoin. It was actually the computer. There was a little computer in the kitchen, and I was just browsing the article, and I turned over my shoulder, and my dad was there, and I said, "Dad, what do you think of this? Some sort of digital money. It's becoming really valuable. People are speculating on it." And he goes, "Look, Ned, I don't pay attention to the fads. Sounds like a fad. Forget about it." And 3 years later, he's telling me, the Bitcoin price is going up every week or so. So.
And your father himself is a long-term Wall Street trader and banker, right?
Yeah, he's always been on Wall Street, a finance guy. And I think growing up, with that in the household, I was always aware of the financial system, but I was never very attracted to it in its current form. And as I got deeper and deeper into Bitcoin, I found my love for finance start to blossom, but I loved that it was going to be a new type of finance, not the finance I had grown up thinking that was very rigid and had to occur on Wall Street and that sort of thing.
A lot of the talk around cryptocurrency back then, and even now I suppose, was about the monetary value, the dollars associated with currency. Was that part of the initial attraction for you? Did you see something more at that time?
Yeah, when I really started to dive into it, 2013 was also just after I'd gotten out of school, and I had been studying psychology and economics. So you can see sort of through that lens, I was super interested in sort of behavior and asking, why do people do things? Why do they do it the way they do? And Bitcoin, as I got deeper into it, became another lens for seeing those types of things, for examining behaviors. And you saw this system of incentives that was propagating a network that was creating a currency. So there was incented behavior, and I thought that was fascinating. And I think that's a big reason I came back to it. I wanted to figure out what else could we incent? What else would these systems mean for behaviors of all of us across the world?
From that early point, I think throughout 2013 and onwards, you were involved with Bitcoin meetups and traveling into New York City to attend and meet people face to face, to talk about this whole ecosystem. And as anyone in this room will probably attest, quite a lot of research is required at first to get your head around understanding how cryptocurrency works and its functions in the world. Did you enjoy that process of self-education?
That process was hard, and it was very rewarding. And I think that it quickly changed my life because it became my entire focus. Going to meetups, finding people to talk to who had similar interests. That was the only thing I wanted to pursue. Finding people who could teach me more about the technology, spending all my other time on forums, even while I was at work, just digesting as much of this information as I possibly could. And so I was getting a lot of reward from that, but it did become sort of my singular focus, and other things in my life took a back seat, especially as I tried to talk about these things with family and friends who I didn't feel that they were understanding what I was interested in and why it was so interesting to me. So, for a while, yeah, I felt pretty alone, and just in the last maybe year and a half, I'd say, since sort of Steemit has begun to have more and more success, have people sort of become more open-minded that maybe were closed-minded 3 years ago, and now they really want to have these conversations with me.
To bring it closer to the present, was Steemit designed, if maybe in part, as a way to bridge the gap between that huge amount of self-research and knowledge that was required to understand it a few years ago? Was Steemit designed to bridge the gap between those heavily well-read people and the mass market who may not have the time or inclination to read about it?
Absolutely. Steemit is meant to be a bridge for the regular person who maybe probably isn't in a position in their lives to spend 16 hours a day thinking about these technologies and thinking about everything that's occurring in the back end of everything. They want to think about what's in front of them, what they can utilize today, where the opportunities are for them today. And so Steemit is very good at bringing people in just to think more about things on the surface, and then once they get incentives, they can think more about the things that are deeper. But it helps everything become a gradual process, and I do think that is very important for the future of cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin model of going out and telling people, this is a great currency system, 21 million coins, deflationary, things like that, I think is great, but it's also very hard to grasp for a lot of people, and Steemit is a much softer onboarding experience.
This is a conversation between Ned and myself. If you guys have questions for him at any point, please raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. I'll just try to keep an eye out for you. Ned, if cryptocurrency can be thought of as a religion, perhaps you buy this premise, perhaps you don't, what is your intentions for enrolling more believers in cryptocurrency?
Sure. So I do think there are some religions in the space, and my personal feeling is that the more religious attitudes tend to form around the less pragmatic technologies, where the technologies are less pragmatic but maybe have network effects because they were early or first. Religion sort of attaches itself to that so that people become more comfortable going out and selling the merits of a certain system. So take, for instance, Bitcoin. Bitcoin has an amazing network effect that I find hugely valuable. But when we look at the technology in certain aspects and compare it to Steem, we see some disadvantages. We see that Bitcoin may take a long time when we're talking about transfers of tokens across the world. It can take sometimes up to an hour to have enough confirmations to feel like you've actually received Bitcoin or sent it. With Steem, it's almost instantaneous. It takes about a second and a half. But yet, that doesn't deter people in the Bitcoin camp from going out and, preaching to the masses that they need to go out and get Bitcoin. So I think for Steemians, we have the, I'll say, luxury of being able to be more pragmatic. We have a system here where the technology doesn't hold us back. And so we get to move forward on a more utilitarian basis. We get to see people show up and get real utility and have real opportunity from this technology, and that's what's drawing people to it. Not so much a religion around you need to get into this ecosystem because of X, Y, and Z ideologies, but you might get into it because of X, Y, and Z opportunities that are here at your fingertips today. Show up, begin blogging, become a community member, you start creating start writing open source software and getting rewarded for that. There are these nuances to the Steem system that help people join the community so much more easily that we just don't need that religion.
Sticking with that idea of religion, have you had any religious experiences along your journey so far? Any that come to mind?
Ooh, yeah, there have been some religious experiences along the way, and I think that's important because it helps open your eyes, and you need to be. I need to be challenging myself all the time, and I think everyone in the community should be challenging themselves to figure out, what are the pragmatic technologies here? Where are the roadblocks? Let's be honest with ourselves and move forward. And so, religious moments for me are about overcoming the religious moments and being more pragmatic and identifying the religion and getting it out of our way and moving forward.
Do you have people in your life or in your business who keep you in check in that regard? Like, if you're, acting out in a certain way or getting a bit too grandiose, do you have people who bring you back down to earth?
Yeah, I think that, there are definitely people on the Steemit team who, really are very critical of new ideas and that sort of thing. Take, for instance, the smart media tokens. Smart media tokens is a culmination of ideas that have been percolating with me since the beginning of last year. As Steem started to have success, lots of other people began to come to me and say, hey, how can I work on this with you or replicate this system and do it similarly? And So I had put a lot of thought into it, and then finally we get to the moment this year where I'm ready to put much more of my energy into it to get it released. And still, I had, some challenges where I have to convince people that, we can build this system, we can do it in a pragmatic and effective way that will, take our vision and bring us forward. And so yeah, there's some convincing that goes along with that. And I've had other ideas that I brought to the table that, get criticized, and then I realize, yeah, maybe that's not a great idea, and we shouldn't do that. But so that's a good thing. You need to have checks and balances. You can't, especially in a community system. That's, I'd say, the next layer of checks and balances with smart media tokens. Even that's something we present to the community as a sort of proposal. This is technology we want to build. We're proposing it to the community, and I think that anyone proposing ideas has that same sort of checks and balances system where they need to have community approval. But luckily with smart media tokens, it seems like the community is behind the idea a little bit. I don't know, are you guys behind the smart media tokens idea? Cool.
With smart media tokens, how do you see that plugging into existing media organizations, for example, if we could use that as a hypothetical example?
That's a great question. And with existing organizations, we can talk about some of the challenges they may face in shifting their business, adding some new element to their business, or pivoting completely. There are challenges there. And then we can also talk about conceptually, how they actually would approach an implementation. Maybe I'll start there, because I do feel that ultimately smart media tokens becomes a very turnkey, very easy to accomplish implementation. Through a few tools, some which exist today and some which are being built. But for instance, an interface to the Steem blockchain that looks a lot like the Discuss comments widget. Has everyone here seen Discuss on some blog they've stumbled on the internet, right? So imagine that you have a Discuss-like widget that's plugged into the Steem blockchain. If anyone here has ever built a WordPress blog, you also know that it's very easy to swap out your comments widget, right? So a tool like that would allow every blogger who's got an existing domain, an existing publishing business, or an existing blog, simply to swap out their comments widget, and then there'd be moderator tools that would allow them hit the button and get your token launched. And then there's a token running, and it looks a lot like the comments overlay to Steemit.com or busy.org or something like that.
With that example, I can see the perhaps objection that a media organization would have, which would be, how do we moderate comments on a blockchain which is immutable and uncensorable?
The answer is you do and you don't. On your domain, on your properties, on your websites, you have, as the application owner and operator, you have all the rights in the world to curate that interface and moderate comments, hide comments, move spam out of the way. And you should do that, because ultimately you're trying to provide an experience to your readers that is good for your business, good for your brand, and maybe all those spam comments aren't a good thing for the brand, right? But at the same time, anything that goes into the blockchain stays on the blockchain. But these are two separate layers of technology. So the person running the publishing site or the blog has all the power in the world to moderate with the same tools and experience they do today with their current comments widget. But there is also now this sort of permanent record in the back end that keeps content and speech alive into perpetuity. And I think that there's value to having both. You get a curated experience and you have a public record of speech. And I think that there's a big value add in having speech protected into forever.
I think everyone in this room would be on board with that, because they already have Steemit accounts and they would therefore be earning Steem on their comments on major news organizations, let's say. How do you see yourself convincing such organizations to get on board? What's your, roadmap for pitching to them or getting them to say, all right, we'll give it a go?
Yeah, there's a few key things there, but what I've found in my experience is that they're very open to it. Smart media tokens represents an opportunity for them that is completely additive to the things they're doing today. It's not an opportunity that threatens any of their existing business models. A token is something they overlay to what they're already doing with advertising or repackaging data and selling it. what tokens do is they augment these things. They potentially bring in more users, which could amplify their other revenue models and that sort of thing. So they're very open-minded to it. And beyond that, there's a lot of blockchain buzz out there. And it's kind of easy to get the attention of these organizations today and say, hey, you really need to be looking at this. There's a solution for you, and it's turnkey, and potentially it'll be profitable for you. So people are interested from a curiosity standpoint, and I think from a business standpoint, it's a very practical and, like I said with the comments widget, it seems like an easy implementation. So it's a very practical pitch for them.
That's just one example of smart media tokens being used. Are there other use cases that you would like to mention or elaborate on?
Absolutely. I think it's great to talk about examples for smart media tokens in the context of existing publishers and all that, because it really sort of captures the imagination, where you can take something existing that you're very familiar with, whether it's the New York Times, Washington Post, rollingstone.com, and then adding some new technology to it. But ultimately, there's lots of different structures of content websites. Take, for instance, Steemit or Reddit, where you have a more global interface covering much more content, different varieties of content. These types of websites can probably harness smart media tokens in even more ways and present even more smart media tokens to their audience that maybe capture, different types of communities that host different types of content or interests. And ultimately, I see so many tokens appearing on these sort of global websites, like Steemit inside Steemit communities, or in Reddit and Reddit subreddits, that we'll start to see tokens really represent people's personalities and their interests. And ultimately, when you go to look at someone's profile and you see all the tokens they hold, you'll get a pretty interesting idea of what they're interested in and what they've been focusing their time on and what communities they've been contributing to. And ultimately, I see this leading to a world where tokens are not just sort of exchange of value, but are information that we'll want to provide to each other. We'll be able to express who we are through these tokens.
Maybe hard to answer, but do you have a launch date in mind or a rough idea of when smart media tokens will go live?
In my pocket right now, I have my cell phone, and in my cell phone I have an application. It's the Slack application. In Slack is where the Steemit developers and the engineering team and everybody else is doing all their updates, and we're seeing all the commits to the GitHub repo. And I can tell you that there's a lot of action around the smart media tokens repository right now. And it's very exciting, and we're gonna have a testnet up soon this year, and then we will get smart media tokens launched early next year.
You, Ned, are the public face of a cryptocurrency movement. What are the pros and cons of that role, being the public face of a currency and a platform that hundreds of thousands of people use regularly?
I don't think about it that much. It's great. It allows me to meet so many incredible people with diverse talents and interests. It allows me to funnel in information, and it allows me to grow from that. And I couldn't be more appreciative of that as an opportunity. And it comes with responsibility too, as a leader. And I appreciate that too, because I believe that we can change the world with this technology, and I'm incredibly grateful that other people are supporting us and themselves and all of us in that vision. It's really special to be in a position like this.
That's a diplomatic answer. Have you had any strange or unexpected interactions with fans over the last 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah, I've met some great people. You do become a sort of target, I will say. So I don't know if you guys remember, but we had, like, there was a hacking incident last year, that sort of thing. So you become a sort of target, for some malicious actors and that sort of thing. And you respond accordingly, the security procedures that we take, inside the company and, inside the website and all that, we think about these procedures all the time. We're all constantly improving them and that sort of thing. So there's that aspect, and then yeah, I've had some pretty strange conversations with people too, but incredible conversations on the whole, and yeah.
Well, I'll give you a direct example that I heard from someone last night. At the last Steem Fest in Amsterdam, I believe several people came up to you and gave you artworks of your face that they had drawn themselves. And what was your reaction?
And
to
I
that?
still have those artworks in my bedside table. So
just a big pile of Ned faces.
yep, I have a whole collection. I hold on to them dearly.
For anyone in the crowd with a picture of Ned, this is your chance after to come and give it to him so you can add it to the pile, of course. No comment. To turn to financial matters, your account on Steemit has an estimated value of $3.5 million. What does that amount mean to you?
It means opportunity. It means that there's been growth. And yeah, I'm excited to see it be worth a lot more.